The first time Marcus hit Lena, she couldn't believe it was happening. They had been dating for only a few months, and the relationship had started out like a fairy tale. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to worship the ground she walked on. But as the months went by, Lena began to notice small changes in Marcus's behavior. He would become jealous and possessive, accusing her of flirting with other men, or secretly desiring them. He would snap at her over trivial matters, his voice laced with venom. And then, one night, after an argument about Lena spending time with her friends, Marcus flew into a rage. He grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the wall, his eyes wild with fury. "Don't you ever defy me again," he snarled, his hand still gripping her neck. "You belong to me, understand? I own you." Lena nodded, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. Marcus released his hold, and she crumpled to the floor, gasping for air. That night marked the beginning of a living hell that would consume Lena's life. Marcus quickly escalated his abuse, his control over Lena tightening like a vice. He monitored her phone calls, read her text messages, and even installed cameras in their home to keep watch over her every move. Lena felt like a prisoner in her own home, constantly under surveillance, her every action scrutinized and judged. The physical abuse became more frequent and more brutal. Marcus would punch her, slap her, and kick her for the slightest perceived transgression. He would pin her down and rape her, claiming that her body was his, to do with as he pleased. Lena soon became accustomed to the taste of blood in her mouth and the sting of bruises on her skin. But the worst part was the emotional torment that Marcus inflicted upon her. He would belittle her intelligence, her appearance, and her worth as a human being. He would tell her that she was nothing without him, that no one else would ever love her the way he did. Lena's self-esteem eroded day by day, until she truly believed that she was nothing more than a worthless piece of garbage. As the months turned into years, Lena's spirit began to fracture under the constant onslaught of abuse. She would sit for hours in the dark, staring at the wall, wondering how she had ended up in this nightmare. She dreamed of escape, of freedom, but Marcus's control was too complete. He had isolated her from her family and friends, leaving her with no one to turn to for help. Lena's mind began to play tricks on her. She would hear Marcus's voice in her head, even when he wasn't there. She would doubt her own sanity, wondering if she was overreacting to his treatment of her. She began to believe that she deserved the abuse, that she was a bad person who needed to be punished. One day, Marcus came home from work in a particularly foul mood. He stormed into the house, his eyes blazing with rage. Lena knew that she had done nothing wrong, but she still felt a sickening dread in the pit of her stomach. Marcus grabbed her by the hair, dragging her into the kitchen. He slammed her head against the counter, the force of the impact making her see stars. He picked up a knife from the cutting board and pressed it against her throat. "I should just end it right now," he growled. "No one would miss you. You're nothing but a pathetic excuse for a human being." Lena whimpered in fear, her body shaking uncontrollably. She knew that Marcus was capable of anything, that he might actually go through with it. But just as he was about to slice the knife across her throat, something inside Lena snapped. With a burst of adrenaline, she brought her knee up hard into Marcus's groin. He doubled over in pain, dropping the knife. Lena didn't hesitate. She grabbed the knife and ran out of the house as fast as she could. She managed to flag down a passing car, begging the driver for help. The woman took one look at Lena's battered face and swollen eyes, and agreed to take her to the police station. At the station, Lena gave a statement about the years of abuse she had endured at Marcus's hands. The police were stunned by the extent of the violence she had suffered, and they quickly issued a restraining order against Marcus. Lena was taken to a women's shelter, where she began the long process of healing. She met with a therapist who helped her work through the trauma of her abuse and regain her sense of self-worth. Slowly but surely, Lena began to rebuild her life. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt along the way. But Lena refused to let Marcus define her anymore. She enrolled in college, pursued her dreams, and eventually became a successful businesswoman. She met a wonderful man who treated her with kindness and respect, and they fell deeply in love. Years later, Lena stood before a crowd of women at a domestic violence awareness event, telling her story with tears in her eyes. She spoke of the darkness she had endured and the light she had found on the other side. She urged other victims of abuse not to give up hope, to fight for their freedom and their lives. As she finished her speech, Lena felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had survived the unthinkable, had emerged from the shadows of abuse stronger and more resilient than ever before, and she knew that no matter what challenges life threw her way, she would always have the strength to face them head on. But as Lena stood there on stage, basking in the applause of the audience, a sudden realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. Marcus was still out there somewhere, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his chance to strike again. He had never been caught or punished for the years of abuse he had inflicted upon her. Lena's heart began to race as panic set in. She scanned the crowd, searching for any sign of Marcus's familiar face. But she saw nothing except the supportive smiles of the women who had come to hear her speak. Still, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus was close by. She quickly stepped off the stage, making her way through the crowd towards the exit. She needed to get out of there, to put as much distance between herself and the threat of Marcus as possible. As she pushed open the doors and stepped out into the night air, Lena heard a voice behind her that made her blood run cold. "Hello, Lena," Marcus said, his voice dripping with malice. "Did you really think you could escape me that easily?" Lena whirled around, her heart pounding in her chest. There he was, standing just a few feet away from her, a cruel smile playing on his lips. He looked just as he had the last time she had seen him, years ago when she had fled from him in terror. "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time," Marcus continued, taking a step closer to Lena. "You may have fooled those idiots in there with your little speech, but I know the truth. I know that you're nothing but a weak, pathetic woman who needs to be taught a lesson." Lena backed away from Marcus, her eyes darting around for any sign of help. But the street was empty, and there was no one around to hear her if she screamed. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking with fear. "Just leave me alone. I don't want any trouble." Marcus laughed, a cold and hollow sound that sent chills down Lena's spine. "You don't get to make demands anymore," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You belong to me, remember? And I'm going to make sure that you never forget it." With that, Marcus lunged forward, grabbing Lena by the arm and dragging her towards a dark alleyway. She struggled and fought against him, but his grip was too strong. He slammed her against the brick wall, pinning her there with his body. "Now," he hissed in her ear, his breath hot and putrid against her skin. "Let's see how much you've learned over the years. Let's see if you've become the obedient little slave I trained you to be." Lena closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she braced herself for the inevitable. She knew that Marcus would stop at nothing to break her, to destroy any shred of hope or dignity she had left. But as he began to rip at her clothes, she suddenly felt a surge of strength coursing through her veins. "No," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I won't let you do this to me anymore. I am not your slave. I am not your property, and I will never let you hurt me again." With that, Lena brought her knee up hard into Marcus's groin for the second time in her life. He doubled over in pain, loosening his grip on her just enough for her to break free. She ran out of the alleyway, her heart pounding and her breath coming in ragged gasps. She didn't stop running until she reached the safety of the police station. There, she filed a report against Marcus for attempted assault and violation of his restraining order. The police quickly arrested him and charged him with multiple counts of domestic violence and abuse. Lena knew that the road ahead would be difficult. There would be trials and testimonies and endless nights reliving the horrors of her past. But for the first time in years, she felt truly free. She had stood up to her abuser and refused to let him control her anymore. As she sat in the police station, waiting for her statement to be taken, Lena knew that she had finally reclaimed her life. She had faced her demons head-on and emerged victorious. And she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always have the strength to overcome them.